Hello and welcome to Elevate Your Wealth. I'm your host, Casey Elkins, co-founder and managing partner at Elevated Financial Management. As we do every week, we're talking about retirement, specifically things that retirees need to focus on, need to pay attention to make sure that they have a successful retirement set up for them in the future. Today, we're going to talk about 6 retirement myths, 6 financial planning myths that we want to all be aware of so that we can have that successful retirement. I'm joined as always by my friend, father-in-law, and business partner, Mark Stimpson. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing good, Casey. It's always a real pleasure to be with our viewers on a weekly basis. And I think this week's episode, everybody's going to find these myths. They've heard of most of them, right? You might not have heard of 1 or 2 of them, but we need to debunk them. That's the thing, right? We need to get rid of them because they can be some myths that if you follow them, it can be disastrous when it comes to your retirement. And I think that's what this episode's going to do a really good job of, is telling the truth about some of these myths that we know are just not accurate.
Right, and you know, what we find is that these myths really kind of get passed around as though they're factual, right, of course, that's what makes it a myth, right, of course. But then in addition to that, commonly they come from people that mean well. It's not very often that these come from a financial planner, but commonly they come from somebody we work with, right? Or from an uncle or an aunt or somebody that is trying to give us good advice, but really financial planning, retirement planning specifically, is not their day-to-day involvement, right? That's not what they do or have done throughout their life. And so they're meaning well, but it can be misinformation. So let's jump right into it. This first one we think is really key. Following the 4% rule. That is a real myth. We're going to talk about what that 4% rule is. As a matter of fact, Mark, maybe you could share with folks what is the 4% rule and why is it such a problem for us to follow that?
Yeah, this goes back probably close to 40, maybe 50 years now, right? Some in the industry will call it the Michael Finke rule, right? So it has to do with the supposed drawdown rate when you begin to take money out of your portfolio come retirement time, that 4%, you're going to be okay. If you stay to that, your assets will last. Well, we know with what's happening in the world, some of the smartest mind, I think of Dr. Wade Pfau, Moshe Milevsky, who I have a lot of respect for, that study retirement, teach at some of the most prestigious universities in the country and around the world. They will tell you that there's a lot of belief out there now that 4% should actually be almost cut in half now.
Right.
If you're going to last 30 to 40 years in retirement, closer to a 2% rule. Can you imagine, friends, if you're viewing this show, what that means? If you had a $1 million portfolio and you were limited to 2%, you'd only be able to take $20,000 a year off of your portfolio and have it last. So that's why you'll hear us every week talk about the importance of a plan, right? And that's critical to what we're going to talk about here, because that 4% rule can be a little high if you don't engage the right type of vehicle. Now that we know of some vehicles that pay a lot better than that and will guarantee the money to last a lifetime, no matter how many years you live. So again, you want to understand this rule, but more importantly, it doesn't make it fact. Everybody's situation is very unique. And one of the things that make it unique, we don't know what your individual spending patterns are. And until we do, and we know what your cash flow analysis that you need done, that's really going to help determine how much you've got to take out of your portfolio each and every week.
Right. It's really needs-based, right? What are your needs in retirement? What are your goals? And that's the type of planning that we really focus on, is purpose-built, right? Purpose-driven planning. And so, you know, like this 4% rule is really kind of a one-size-fits-none, right? It maybe can work for some, but to say that it's a hard and fast rule and that's what's going to create success for everybody in retirement is implying that everybody's retirement is the same, and that's really just not the circumstance. And so, you know, we have clients that have 3 or 4 or 5 children. We have clients that have no children, right? And so the importance of what you leave behind is potentially different depending on who you're leaving that to or not leaving that to, right? What your goals are in retirement for what you want to do. they may require more spending or more income to be able to meet those spending goals, whereas some folks just want to spend time in their garden and be around their house. And either one of those is okay, but it's important to make sure that your finances fit your lifestyle instead of making your lifestyle fit your finances. And so that's why we're talking about these, because a lot of the myths that we see really are just kind of general rules that get passed out as though they fit for everybody, and the circumstances that they don't. They may fit for you, some of them may fit for you, but there's a chance that none of them fit for you. And that's where a custom financial plan is really the key to make sure that you've got what you need as you move into your retirement. Now, the second thing that we'll talk about is cash is king, right? Now, my mom always said cash is king, and that really was kind of in reference to when you're giving a gift to somebody, like if you're giving a graduate something, you know, maybe you give them cash, right, and let them buy what they want. But is cash king inside of your retirement plan? That's really the question. Is cash king inside of your investment portfolio? And the answer there is no, it's not, right? Because cash can really cause a problem, especially when it comes to inflation. So if we have too much of our investments in cash, it's nice to have the protection that comes with that, especially with the risk that we've seen, the volatility that we've seen in the market recently. And not only that, but even over the last 30, 40 years, that volatility has always been there. It's just been elevated at different times throughout that time frame. But cash is great when it comes to protection, but it really misses out on the upside of the market, and it really misses out from an inflation perspective. And so we want to be careful with how much cash we have.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned this, Casey. Really what cash should be used for is immediate liquidity. You know, and we keep it simple in our office. We use 3 buckets. We have a really nice glass board in our conference rooms, and they have a red, a yellow, and a green bucket. And the yellow bucket is our cash bucket, right? We want usually 6 to 12 months liquidity in that bucket at all times because life happens, right? But as Casey, you mentioned, if you've got too much in there, and right now with all this uncertainty, people are pulling out of the market, right? Because they're worried about their 401ks. They're taking it all and putting that into cash. Well, see, that can be a very bad decision as well, right? So again, when we let emotions guide what we're doing, it can backfire on us. And that's why we want our viewers today, if you're listening to the show and you're thinking, you know what, I don't have much of a plan. I really need to do something different. Maybe I've got too much cash. Maybe I've got $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 in cash. That could be a problem, right? So please pick up the phone, call 844-342-7142. Again, that's 844-342-7142. Let us help you put together a plan that's going to address cash. It's going to address income. It's going to talk about your assets, how you're diversified inside what we call the red money. How's that working out right now with all this volatility? So please pick up the phone, call us. All we're going to do is have a conversation. I want to repeat that number one more time. 844-342-7142. So
we've made it through our first 2 myths. Number 1 being following the 4% rule. Maybe you were planning on doing that, or perhaps you haven't even considered how much you can take out of your portfolio. This would be an opportunity for you to have that discussion with a financial planner, building something specifically to you. The second is that cash is king. We're going to talk about the 4 other myths that we want to debunk right here on Elevate Your Wealth. So don't change the channel. Come right back. We'll see you shortly.
Call 844-342-7142 for your written financial plan and inflation report. Inflation continues to hit all-time highs. Will your investments provide you the income you need in retirement? Are you losing purchasing power of your savings to inflation? Don't let runaway inflation erode your retirement dreams. Now is the time to act to be certain you have an income strategy that overcomes the effects of inflation. Call Mark Casey and their team at 844-342-7142 for your no-cost financial plan with inflation report. You might have the savings you need today to weather the storm, but how will inflation affect your nest egg 5, 10, 15 years from now? Discover the peace of mind you deserve. Call Casey, Mark, and the team at 844-342-7142 for your no-cost written financial plan with inflation report, or use the QR code to schedule your appointment today.
We know the market is going going to get worse from here. This is the biggest monthly decline in 10 years. People's 401ks took.
Well, my investments are tanking. My retirement isn't going as planned. I can't believe I let my kid talk me into buying crypto. I mean, what is that anyway?
This was the fourth worst contraction in history.
So how are you two doing?
Your financial future doesn't have to be uncertain. Call now for your own complimentary portfolio review and written financial plan. Welcome back to Elevate Your Wealth. I'm your host, Casey Elkins, co-founder and managing partner at Elevated Financial Management. Today, we are debunking 6 myths when it comes to retirement planning. We've talked about the 4% rule. Is that the correct amount that you can pull out of your financial plan or out of your investments in retirement? We would say for most folks, that is not the case. Second is that cash is king. Well, in reality, that cash can really be a drag on your portfolio when the market's doing well, and inflation will eat those dollars alive. And then the number 3 myth that we're going to talk about today is you don't need long-term care insurance. Mark, is that the case?
That could be very, very dangerous, that type of thinking, right? Now, is long-term care for everyone? We know the answer to that is absolutely not, right? Not everybody can afford it because it is expensive. But one thing I will say to this is that the leverage that we can get if we have the health that's going to allow us. I love these hybrid type of policies now where they have an actual death benefit that can be used if you end up needing home care or assisted living or worse off, nursing home care, right? Because if you can put $1 in and get possibly $4 or $5 out if you need it for long-term care, that's pretty good leverage. That would be a pretty good deal. And the best part about it is that if I don't need it, which is what we all hope happens, right? We just fall asleep in death and that's the end of it. The reality is that doesn't usually happen for most of us. So if that doesn't happen, you get the money back in the form of the death benefit. Now, you won't get it back, right? Because you will have had to have passed away. But it's going to come back to your kids, or charity, wherever you're leaving that money, right? So it's a wonderful tool that can be used to address long-term care, get a pretty good leverage on your money, but more importantly, then it's going to allow, if you are fortunate enough to not need long-term care, that death benefit is going to come back. So you really got the long-term care coverage for free, right? So it's a really, really good option if you can afford to get it. But please don't just forget about long-term care and say that's only for the rich or I don't have enough money. We don't know that until we really analyze the whole situation. So if you're debating about it, just know that there are plans out there that can address this issue, because this would be the one thing, if it happens, that can blow a good plan, right up. It'd be just, you might as well drop an atom bomb on it, because you're probably not going to have the money to be able to afford to stay at home. If you might, but what happens if you need to go to a facility, which costs even more? So again, you having a plan, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and that long-term care insurance piece, I think it's really important that we note that, like you said, we hope that you don't need it, right? And of course, that's what you hope too, right? We hope you don't need it. But the reality is if you're planning to self-insure, which would mean that you just have your assets off to the side and one day when you need them, you'll start taking money out, that would be self-insured. If that is the circumstance for you, number one, is that the most efficient use of your money? And the answer is no, it's not. Because that's going to cost you dollar for dollar. If care costs $8,000 a month, it's going to cost you $8,000 a month. And if you need it for a number of years, well, then that really adds up, and that's a direct dollar for dollar cost out of your portfolio. But if you use long-term care insurance, like Mark is mentioning, you get leverage on the money. So maybe you need that $8,000 a month, but if you could get that $8,000 a month worth of coverage and it only cost you $4,000 a month, well, then that's great leverage on the money, right? So it's really about being efficient. And that's really where the plan comes in, to make sure that all the parts and pieces are working together. And as we've said before, we'll say it again, if you don't have a long-term care plan, the state does. They've got one for you, and it's not going to be one that you like. It's one where you have no control. You have little say as to how that plays out and where you go during that circumstance. And with a long-term care plan, you can make sure that you get to be in the driver's seat as you're selecting the type of care that you need, whether it's at home or in a facility or whatever that circumstance might look like. Now, let's move into our fourth myth here, which is that financial plans are only for the ultra wealthy. That's really not the circumstance, right? Maybe you can elaborate on that for us a little bit, Mark.
Yeah, this is something that we care tremendously about, and we believe the bulk of our clients come in our office, they do need a long-term care plan. We've got a lot of Boeing clients, people that have just blue collar, they've worked hard, they put planes together, they worked at Weyerhaeuser and any one of we've got a lot of Costco clients that have been very, very successful just working at Costco. They all need a plan. You do not have to have millions of dollars to know the value of a plan. And that's what we share with every client. So if you're sitting out there thinking, this is just for the rich, if you've got a couple of $100,000 saved, a plan is going to help you exactly the same as it would somebody that has a couple $1 million, right? That's the point. We just don't want anybody thinking that a written financial plan is only for those that have a lot of money. That couldn't be farther from the truth, because those of you that maybe were modest, your middle income America, which is our bread and butter client, in reality, we've got wealthy clients too, but our bread and butter client is someone that like worked at Boeing and they maybe have anywhere from $500,000 to $2 million saved up. Those need a plan every bit. In fact, in my estimation, they probably need it every bit, if not more, than someone that has a lot of money. Someone that has a lot of money can afford to lose a bunch of money, and they still have a lot of money.
Sure.
Right? So again, don't think for one moment, if you're viewing this show today, that you have to have a lot of money to have a written plan. You deserve to have a written plan. And if you haven't got one, or your advisor has not told you about they don't do them possibly, you need help on the tax piece, please think about talking to somebody else or getting a second opinion, because you might be pleasantly surprised at how much help that I know we can give you in our office.
Yeah. You know, those financial plans, like you said, Mark, I mean, when I think about our clients, it's not that our clients are all ultra wealthy folks. I mean, we do have a number of clients that are very well off, and they've worked very hard to be where they're at, right? Yeah. That does make up a portion of our client base. But when I think about our day-to-day client, it's like you said, right? It's people that have worked hard to be where they're at, and they've done a nice job saving. And I think that's really the key, is that they've been good savers, right? Yeah. It's not necessarily that they had these big fancy corporate jobs for all these years and they live the lifestyles of the rich and the famous. That's really not the circumstance, right? They have worked hard, they've been good savers, and now they need to figure out how to transition to that next phase of life, how to make their money work for them so that they don't have to go to work and get the paycheck anymore, but they still need the paycheck, right? And so that's really key here. Is sometimes we see people thinking that they have to have $10 or $15 million to work with a financial firm to build them a plan. And that's really not the circumstance, right? It's something that groups, financial offices, even like ourselves, are more than happy to put those plans together for people that want that kind of help. So that being said, you see the number there on your screen, 844-342-7142. This is your opportunity to get that written financial plan. This is your chance at no obligation, completely complimentary, to have a financial plan written out by our team of financial planners that will talk about what you can spend in retirement, what your investments should look like, how they will perform in an up market, in a down market, how taxes will affect your retirement, how to keep pace with inflation, long-term care, Medicare, Social Security, all those questions that are swirling in your mind about how can I be successful at retirement? I have all these decisions to make. That is what a financial plan helps to solve. So don't hesitate, pick up the phone, call us at 844-342-7142. You can scan the QR code there on your screen as well. We're going to talk about a couple more financial myths when we come back from our break right here on Elevate Your Wealth.
Call 844-342-7142 now to receive your complimentary tax map with your written financial plan. Learn multiple strategies that can protect you from higher taxes now and in the future. Taxes are a threat to your financial stability in retirement. Protect yourself from the potential threat of rising taxes. As a retirement planning financial advisory firm, Casey, Mark, and the team will help you navigate the financial waters to pursue your retirement goals. Call 844-342-7142 today. Casey, Mark, and the team offer inclusive retirement services, such as investment directives for your portfolio, income-producing strategies, and wealth preservation plans for your family and legacy. Call Mark, Casey, and the team at 844-342-7142 right now for your complimentary tax map with your written financial plan. Discover tax strategies to keep more of what you have saved in retirement, or use the QR code below to schedule today.
You've got quite an extensive resume. Wow, so many years of management. Bet that was fun. So this job requires basic knowledge of the social media and video platforms, content creation, and SEO. How proficient are you in those areas?
Going back to work after retiring is not ideal. Plan your retirement right. Call now for your own complimentary portfolio review and tax analysis. Hello and welcome back to Elevate Your Wealth. I'm your host, Casey Elkins, with Mark Stimpson. We are co-owners and co-founders of Elevated Financial Management right here in Seattle, Washington. Thank you for joining us. We're happy to have you. Today, we're debunking retirement myths, things that we want to make sure are not swirling around in the minds of our listeners as fact, because we see a lot of these things get passed around as though they are factual and that they apply to everybody, and that's really not the circumstance. So far, we've debunked the 4% rule. How much can you take out of your investments? Also, that cash is king. We want to be careful about how much cash that we have. We've talked about long-term care and the need for long-term care, as well as the idea that financial plans are only for the ultra-wealthy. That is really not the case. Now, our fifth myth that we're going to debunk is estate planning doesn't apply to me. A lot of people think that they don't need an estate plan, that essentially the state will just take care of it for them and the funds will get split up between their children as they see fit, and anything that their children get is just gravy on top, and so they're not very concerned about that. But the question becomes, if you've worked hard for the assets that you have, which undoubtedly you have worked hard to earn them and to save them, you want them to take care of you through your retirement. But when something does happen to you, you want to make sure that those assets that you worked hard for pass on to the right people in the right way with the least amount of stress and hassle. And so making sure that we have that estate plan is really important, right, Mark?
Yeah, in fact, I have a client that comes to mind. He's got 16 cars that he has restored, and he's got some beauties. And one of the sons, he got 3 children, specifically has made it known that he wants the special truck that his dad worked a couple years on. And so you can imagine, what if one of the other kids wanted that same truck, but dad has already promised the one son that was his. And I'm going to tell you, without that being in writing, that other sibling that is thinking to himself, no, I want that just as much as my brother, and I deserve it. I'm one of the kids too.
Right.
This is why certain things need to be put in writing. You might have a wonderful jewelry collection. It could be cars. It could be different antiques. The need for a will, and we believe a trust even more importantly, because a will is just a roadmap that'll get you through probate, usually if it's not contested, where a trust is an actual document that will help us to avoid probate and not have to go through that process. And in our state, Washington, we're one of the, I think it's 9 community property states. You need to have documents in place, and putting it in writing is key to keeping problems from happening, right? Especially a trust. You could try and contest a trust, but it's going to be hard for you to be successful. So again, I can't overemphasize, having some of these documents in place can save your loved ones a lot of emotional distress, because there are families now where siblings don't even talk to each other, all because of what happened when mom or dad or both of them passed away. They don't even talk because of what happened. And it's unloving on our part as parents to not set this up ahead of time. It just is. We don't want our children to be fighting. And what I will say, money gets involved, people change. You may think your family would never do that money would never change anybody. Well, after a 40-year career, I can just tell you that's just not the case. So please, get some of these documents in place. Talk about it. Family meetings are a great way to do this, so that you can get everybody on the same page, and there's no surprises that can happen if we don't do some planning.
Yeah, and a lot of times people think, well, my circumstance, my finances are just not that complex, right? So I really don't need this estate plan. I really don't need a trust or something along those lines. But the hard part is, like you mentioned, now we've left our family in an emotionally compromised, emotionally traumatic situation. And then they have to make decisions. And if they have to make those financial decisions while emotions are already high, that can be a nightmare. And in addition to that, maybe what happens is with probate, that can take a long time, right? I mean, we've seen probate take multiple years. And so now maybe the family has grieved the loss of their loved one, but they're still having to deal with the finances all these years later. And it's just a reminder of the loss of that person that they love. So it just drags on longer than it has to. Now, our last myth that we're going to debunk reminds me of the George Foreman grill. Right? So a lot of people think that their retirement is set it and forget it, right? So I set up my retirement plan, I just leave it alone like the George Foreman grill, right? Set it and forget it. Well, I wish it was that easy, but the reality is that it's not. It requires ongoing management and insight to make sure that retirement plan is going to be successful.
Yeah, in fact, I'm glad we're talking about this because we've had some recent examples. We had a client come in that out of nowhere was diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer. It changed everything. That he was going to continue to work. Well, now that whole plan changed just like a light switch, right? That quick. So please, you just can't put this off.
Yeah, you can't. It is something that needs to be an ongoing process to build that financial plan. Again, it's not set it and forget it. It's something that we need time. We need to adjust that plan to your life as your life changes. And so we say this a lot. You want to make your finances fit your life instead of making your life fit your finances. And that requires ongoing review of what's going on. So today we've debunked 6 financial myths, 6 retirement myths. The first one being follow the 4% rule. That's not the case for most folks. The second is that cash is king. That's really not the circumstance. The third being that I don't need long-term care. Well, you may not, but it still may be the most beneficial way for you to address long-term care. The fourth, financial plans are only for the ultra wealthy. The fifth, estate planning doesn't apply to me. And then the sixth, as we just discussed, that your retirement is not set it and forget it. So this is your opportunity. We're going to offer this to you today. For those that want to pick up the phone and give us a call, it's the same thing that we offer every week because we know it's exactly what you need. It's a written financial plan that will help you be successful in retirement. You see the number there on your screen, 844-342-7142. What you see here on our show is exactly what you see when you come into our office. Mark and I are more than happy to sit down. Our team will sit with you. We will figure out a financial plan built specifically for you. Again, 844-342-7142. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you right back here next week on Elevate Your Wealth.